the truth about the holy sacred name of and Elu, and Ilu, and the false name for Christ and Jesus, and the misrepresentation of the name of God Godriel, whom is called Satan for the name of Ilu, whom is the odd, and the odd one, and whom is the creator and maker and the odd of all the heavens and the earth. Friends, since the letter J isn't in the Hebrew alphabet, does that mean that all the persons in the Bible whose name starts with the letter J are all fictional as well? Friends, the letter J not only does not exist in Hebrew, but it doesn't exist either in the Greek or the Latin alphabet. And it wasn't until the early 1600 that the letter J was invented or was rediscovered. And a palatal approximate sound of the letter J was created and introduced into in the English alphabet, and which sounded similar to the letter Y, which sounded as the word E, as in the number 1 in Chinese, and which created the E sound in many languages, including Hebrew and the Aramaic, and the Greek and the Latin. Furthermore, the Hebrews used E as the letter Yod, as it is shown here, to represent the E sound. And the Greeks used the letter iota. And the Romans used the letter I as in the Latin, I. And the Latin, I represented both the approximate vowel E, and the full vowel in Hebrew, and the letter I, in English, as the sound E, or E. However, there was a sound change, and the palatal letter J was born. And the approximate sound of the J became to be like the palatal fricative sound, as in the Spanish conjunction and, which was indicated with the letter Y, which was similar to the post-alveolar fricative, as with the French sound with the letter J, or as the sound of E, as in the Chinese language, and also as the post-alveolar fabricated affricate sound was used in the ancient Hebrew and Samari 10 alphabet. But before the sound changed, the letter E, or the Hebrew Yud, which was spelled Iy, and E, was predominantly used. But it was also sometimes written as the Romans I. But the minuscule J was confusing to the letter I. Furthermore, to avoid this mistake, of the letter J, of being mistaken for the letter I, a simple curved stroke was used to differentiate them both. However, in many languages that used the letter J, and its sounds, and it was necessary for the change. Therefore there was a change between the two letters, and also within the letters of the ecclesiastical Latin, and to which they begun to use the capital letter I, instead of the minuscule letter J. But the capital letter J was oftentimes used instead of the minuscule ones. And also it was used for the non-vowels, and also for the consonant letters also. Therefore it was necessary to differentiate between the minuscule letters for this very reason. So then many capital letters were invented also, and there was one invented for the letter I and the J respectively. So, many of the names that are in the Bible that they were written in English and with a J, like the name Jesus, and they were originally written in the Latin with a capital I, as in the name Isis, and which came from the Greek form and which were written with the letter I or T, iota, and which transliterated the name of Jesus into Isis, from the Hebrew Aramaic, and which was a rendition of the name of Jesus, which had many other variants, as the names of Jesus took on different forms as it was changed with the spelling of the Hebrew Yod, O, Ray. That alter the transliterated of the name of Gesu into Yeshua, which was also a variation of the name of Jesus in the Hebrew form, when they were spelled with a Yod, and these were the many variations of the name for Jesus. And also there were other names which were transliterated from the letter J, and one other name was also the name Yahashua. Oh, my friends, the fact is that the letter J didn't exist in Hebrew, or Aramaic, or Greek, or in Latin, and it is irrelevant to the existence to all those biblical characters with names, such as Joseph, Jacob, including James, Judah, Jonas, John, etc. Furthermore, since the Old Testament was preserved in the Hebrew language, and there wasn't any alphabetical letter J in Hebrew, then where did names like Jesus and Jonah came from? If the letter J wasn't invented until the 16th century, how did we get the name of Jesus, since J wasn't being invented sometime during the Common Era? And this is why it is so difficult to change one's minds about what is the true name of Christ in today, in this modern era, even in the year 2026. And if Jesus's name was real, was Jesus called Yeshua back then? Because the name Jesus isn't a Hebrew name. And the name Jesus wasn't even a Jewish name, nor was Jesus a Hebrew name either. Then who was it that came down from His heaven to redeem us all? And to save mankind from all of their sins? And what was the true name of Christ? And who was it whom came down from His heaven to save His people, whom were the descendants of Abraham and Jacob and Isaac? And whose descendants them became to be known as the Israelites, and also the children of Israel? Then by what means did we come by the English names of the apostles? With their names being Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Peter? And so on? When these names that they aren't Hebrew, and they don't even sound Jewish to me. Nor neither do they sound like Hebrew names to me either. And who decided to change the name of Gesu to Yeshua Bar Yosef and then back into Jesus, and when did it happen? Furthermore, if there is no letter J in the Hebrew alphabet, and why did they use the letter J when writing or pronouncing the name of God to Jehovah and then back again to names like Yahweh? And also to the fictitious name for God and Jesus the Son of God? And also to Gesu and Yeshua and then to Yeshua? Friends, isn't it because the letter J is fictional, and so much so of all the names that has being translated with the letter J? Then one might conclude that I'm against Christendom and Judaism. And it seems like I am condemning many for their belief in their gods, and their choice to worship whomsoever they wish. I beg to differ. Friends, the issue is, we all have being lied to. And that is that you and I have embraced their lies. And we have assumed that everything that is written in their Bibles is real. And that there aren't any falsities written in them. And that the name of God and Jesus are real. But are they, because many of the name in the Bible have being fabricated? Friends, let me highlight this controversy about the introduction of the prohibited letter J, and the poorly translated name for Christ. And the truth about what is the name of the odd one. And whom is the Eius one, whom is called the Holy One? And whom is the Sovereign One, whom is called and Elu'hymn? And also whom is the Christ and the King of Heaven and the Everlasting King, whom is called the Sovereign One, and whom is called Holy, and also the Almighty. And please let me share the sacred holy name of Elu'hymn today with everyone. Because for many years and many eons Satan have been deceiving us with false names, and a false name for Christ. And what many of us have been relying on is just Satan's lies and falsities, and also his untruths. And for this reason many of us, we all need solid proof in order to change our minds about accepting and Elu'hymn, in order to break free from the error of our forefathers, and from lies and the deception of Satan, and also from the sleight of Satan, and also from the false doctrine, and also the false indoctrination of men. So please give me a chance to clarify things a little bit. Thank you. The Hebrew alphabet is very different from English. For starters, Hebrew has no vowels, at least like English, but instead characters were decorated with dots and lines in certain places to denote the Hebrew consonants and vowels structure. And not only was there no letter J in the Hebrew alphabet, but rather the letter J was forbidden. And neither was there any letter J found in the English alphabet, until it was created and introduced in the early 16th century, and then placed in the English alphabet. My argument essentially is that, since the letter J did not exist before the 16th century, hence the name of Christ as it were was being translated in error. And it is not Jesus. Nor was it Yeshua. And during the time of Prohibition and the Protestant churches, anyone who published the name of Christ as and Elu'hymn, whom also was named and the Holy One, whose names has being omitted by the Jesuits. And the name of God and Jesus was given to us to deceive us. Because these are the two egregious names, and they are the misrepresentation of the divinity of the whom is the Holy One. And also whom is the Sovereign One of all the heavens and the earth. And whom is the Almighty and the Odd One. And also of the Odd One, whom is called Christ. and the E, holy prophet. Elu, and Elu'hymn, and Elu'hymn. And also the Od of Elu'hymn. Friends, therefore since the letter J isn't in the Hebrew alphabet, then does this means that all persons' name in the Bible whose name starts with the letter J, that their names are also all fictional as well? Thank you. The end, to be continued.